Hey guys, today I'm going to talk to you about blooming coffee and why it's actually important. So when we talk about blooming, specifically we're really talking about pour-over coffee in particular. If you're making an immersion coffee like a French press, it's not necessarily as important because the water is going to keep extracting with the coffee grinds as you go. But when we're making a pour-over, something happens with the coffee grinds. When you put hot water onto those, you get a bloom of gases that come out of the coffee grinds. And what's happening is, since those are expelling out of the coffee grinds, it's very difficult for them to then soak in water and then extract coffee into your actual drink. So what we do with this is we pour a small amount of water at the very beginning of our brew to allow those gases to escape, and then when we come back with our water pour later, it actually helps it to extract more evenly and consistently as we go. So one of the reasons that this is important is because it makes sure that all of the coffee is evenly wet as well. And when we look at a bloom, there's a couple of things in particular that we're using to gauge this. The first is the amount of water that you use, and the second is the amount of time that you let it sit with the coffee grinds. And on average, you want to make sure that you use enough water to get all of those coffee grinds wet. And this is usually a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio. What that means is the amount of coffee grinds that you're using, you just multiply that by 2 or by 3. If you're in that range, you're really pretty good. Some people swear by a little bit more water, that 3-to-1 range. Some people use a little bit less, 2-to-1 range. But in general, that is a good one to go in. If you're down to a 1-to-1 ratio, for example, then you may not be using enough water. A good way to illustrate this is if you're using 20 grams of coffee, then you would use 40 grams of water to bloom your coffee, or 60 grams of water to bloom the coffee at the beginning. General rule of thumb is also that you just use about 30 seconds to let it bloom. And this is dependent on the age of the coffee as well as how long ago it was ground. If the coffee was ground fresh, you need to give it a solid 30 seconds, sometimes even 40 seconds if it's very fresh, to allow those gases to escape out of the coffee grinds. If the coffee is a little bit older, then you may get away with 20 seconds. And you can really see this when you pour the water onto your coffee grinds. You will see the gas start to bubble up and escape out of the top of the coffee grind bed. With a little bit older coffee, you'll see that gassy bubbling action stops a lot sooner than with a very fresh coffee. So you can pay attention to that, but if you just give it 30 seconds, you're really good. So my personal recommendation, give it your coffee dose, say you're using 15 grams of coffee, double it, put 30 grams of water on top of it, and let it sit for 30 seconds before you continue pouring your water. And that's it. That's all you really need to worry about. And if you do that, you will get better pour-over coffee time and time again. Thanks for coming. See you next time.